Good afternoon. I'm Dara Bunjon. I'm the food enthusiast here at More Living, and I welcome you to the show. If this is your first time tuning in, I'm a food writer, food stylist, PR maven, and a very frustrated baker. We welcome you to send in questions. I will be watching the screen today, so please feel free to send in questions for our guests. As always, the show will be up on the More Living Facebook page and jmoreliving.com's page for perpetuity, so feel free to dig back in the archives and share the show. Take it for your walks, your runs, and your drives. I am so excited about today's guest. It is renowned worldwide Chef Norman Van Aken. He is a self-taught chef who has made an indelible imprint on what we eat in America. In the 80s and the 90s, his cuisine inspired using local ingredients. Norman Van Aken is best known for introducing fusion into the lexicon of global cookery. He is also known as the founding father of New World Cuisine, a celebration of Latin, Caribbean, Asian, American, and African flavors, thus pioneering a new visionary way of cooking in America. He is the only Floridian chef inducted into the prestigious James Beard's Foundation list of who's who in America in food and beverage. He was the 2016 he was the 2016 Menu Masters Hall of Fame inductee along with previous winners Wolfgang Puck, Jacques Pepin. He has 6 cookbooks under his belt, an autobiography inclusive in there, No Experience Necessary. Anthony Bourdain called him the big dog of Florida cooking. Welcome, Norman.
Thank you, Dara. Thank you for having me on your show.
My pleasure. So what's on your plate today?
This, first off, your show.
Well, I feel I feel honored. Cool. I'm the center of it. I just want to tell people that anything that you want to know that we're talking about, you can find on Norman's webpage, which is normanvanaken.com, and his connections and website, Instagram, all that will be floating up. So Norman, COVID, it's changed a lot of things. Your restaurant Norman's was moving. You've adapted. You're now doing some cooking classes online. Do you want to talk about that?
Absolutely. Thank you. Yeah, when COVID hit, I remember writing in my, I keep kind of a diary of sorts. And I remember writing, this thing's been going on for 3 weeks. I don't know how much longer it can go on, but I'm so over it. I'm going to start cooking it at home. Not realizing that 3 weeks was just the bare scratch of what it was going to be like. But we adapt. I mean, that's a human nature. That's how we cope. And so while we were here stuck in virtually inside, except for the, furtive quick trips to the grocery store and try and get it all in, before 9 o'clock in the morning. My wife and she began holding the phone and the camera, and basically I was doing cooking classes online, and realized that at one point we reached to 100 of those things. And some folks got a hold of me and said, we're a tech group and we can help you do what you're doing, but we can set up some cameras to where you can make it a real virtual hands-on kind of cooking class situation. And so I agreed to do that with them, and they set up my cameras so I could have one over the stove, one over my cutting board, and the laptop facing me. And people join in like a Zoom call, but you're not forced to listen to some monotonous stuff that you really don't want to listen to. You can have your glass of wine or two and put on some comfortable clothes and cook. And you'll be cooking they're cooking in their homes with their friends and family, and I'm cooking here. And 90 minutes, maybe 75 minutes. The classes
Okay.
are like between $25 and $35. And all they have to do is get the ingredients, and I give them a prep list, a recipe, the pots and pans kind of things that they will need, and they ask questions during the class, so it's very natural and fun. And I do some things that are a little bit chefy, but most of all, I do things that I think people will want to recreate at home.
And you have one coming up, I think, on the 18th. It's pork tenderloin. So everybody, go to the website. The price is more than reasonable. $25 or $30. You can have a couple people there, have a little dinner party. So if you want to learn from the top chefs, here's what you're going to do. It looks like we lost Norman for a little bit. Hopefully he'll click back in. And let me tell you, how I met Norman. Years ago, there he is. Okay. I was just going to tell him how I met you.
Okay.
I was trying to figure that out. Norman generously donated a recipe to a cookbook done by Microplane that benefited the Kidney Foundation. And I met him at Star Chef's first conference. And I went around to all the different chefs asking them to donate. I think that was 2005. The book came out in 2007. And over a period of time, we have stayed connected for one reason or another. I'm curious, I was digging back into young, not that you're that old, but the young man that started off on a career path. I remember reading in the notes, it says you knew you were artistic, but you didn't know what you wanted to do. So you were from Illinois, and you it looked like you had a wanderlust. You were a carny, you were a roofer. Yeah. Tell us more about that path.
Well, back then, Dara, not many people, certainly not where I was from, ever considered the idea of becoming a professional chef. It was not in the dialogue. I mean, I didn't even watch The Galloping Gourmet or Julia Child on television. I loved, looking back, I loved food and flavors, and I loved, like cooking with my mom and sisters. But again, it wasn't at all like in the thinking of what I would do. Wasn't around it, even though my mother was in the restaurant business, and she was a waitress when she met my father and became a manager as she became older, more mature, and she loved her work. And so there was a bit of a proximity to it, but it was not in my wheelhouse. I was a dreamer, and I very much was absorbing the artists. I loved reading, I loved writers, and I loved art in many different forms, and kind of shyly, I guess, tentatively thought about how I might someday do something in that field, especially writing. And by the time I was 19 and 20, I was writing some like songs and play and some short stories, never long form. But I don't know, I just didn't really have the thinking that I could get published. So I tabled that, and I was working all kinds of odd jobs right after stopping going to college. I went to college just because I didn't know what else to do for a bit, and then to stay away from having to be drafted. But when that threat left,
yeah,
I realized that I had to go to work and make some money to pay the bills, and I had no real marketable skills. And so I did what my friends were doing, which was like paint houses. I worked on a golf course, mowing the lawns and planting the sod. And I was just kind of lost. I was really not knowing what the hell was going on. And then I had that job as a roofer, still living in Illinois at the time. And a rainstorm burst out one afternoon, and we all of us workers ran to our trucks except me. I stopped in the grass. We were roofing a high school, and I stopped in the grass of the high school, and I just rolled around in the grass, just laughing and just enjoying the muck and the dust of the roof washing off me. And it was then that as I was rolling that I hit my boss's legs, who was standing over me, staring down at me like, "You're fired." And I was like, shit. So I got a newspaper and looked for a job. And there was a job that said, short order cook needed, no experience necessary. And I circled it. And the next day I went to that restaurant. I hid my ponytail underneath a high school sweater that I dredged out of a chest of drawers from somewhere. And they hired me. And the next day they saw that I had long hair, which was in 1972 was a big kind of deal, that the person would have long hair. But they were good people and they said, let's see if he works. And I did work. And so there I was, my first job as a cook, short order cook, flipping eggs, making hamburgers, and working with waitresses and taking the tickets off the wheel and filling the orders.
Okay, so that is Illinois.
Right.
How did you end up in Key West?
Yes, it would take almost like a biographer to keep it all straight, but I'll just give you the condensed version. I
Okay.
had been to Key West on a complete lark, following a late party in Champaign-Urbana. I asked where this particular friend was that was missing from the party. And they said, oh, he went down to Key West. And I was like, and this was the end of a very long, harsh winter in Illinois, hopefully in the end. And I said, Key West, where's that? And they went, you go to Miami and keep on going. I'm like, oh, that sounds great. Anybody want to go to Key West? And these two brothers went, yeah, we'll go. And I said, when do you want to go? They said, let's go now. And we got in there, we got some supplies and then got in their van. And 36 hours later, we pulled into Key West and I fell in love with that place. So after a little bit of back and forth, I got my grub stake, my $300, and I went to Key West to live in 1973. By that time, I fell in love with a girl who was a waitress at that diner, and we went together.
Okay, and that is your wife now.
Yep.
Well, congratulations. She, for those years being together, and I know that she was your camera person in
Yeah.
some of this, and she supports you, so that's great. Let's talk about what you're known for.
Okay.
What you created. We're talking about the era of Alice Water, California cuisine. We're talking Mark Miller, Southwest. Now we're talking about the New World Cuisine that you created. So tell people what New World Cuisine is.
Okay. It was an incredible time. I was very, very lucky in many ways, Dara, in the path that my life took. I did go back to Illinois and ended up working for a gentleman named Gordon Sinclair, who was an astute observer of the shifting culture of American restaurants at that time. In 1982, now I'd been cooking 11 or 12 years, and he hired me to open his new restaurant in suburban Lake Forest, Illinois. And he had just come back from California, where he went to Spago and had Wolfgang Puck's menu that he brought with him. And he had been to Chez Panisse and brought back the cookbook, the Chez Panisse menu cookbook. And what Gordon helped me sort of see was beyond my very limited sort of provincial way of looking at the world still was the bigger picture. American gastronomy was coming alive. The American regional food movement, New American Cuisine, as it was called, was blossoming across the land. There were chefs who were indoctrinated into the understanding of the European methodology of cooking, but were synthesizing that with an American understanding, American vibration. The American Southwest had its own regional cuisine that was highlighted by some great chefs like Mark Miller, Dean Fearing, Robert Del Grande. John Sedlar was an early proponent of that as well. And then concurrently, we began to see like New Orleans. We began to see Paul Prudhomme doing what he was doing. And we all began to see this, not through the internet like today, but we began to see it primarily through magazines of the day, the Bon Appetits, the Food and Wine, the gourmet magazines. And so I began to realize that America was being represented by the cuisine of the Southwest or New Orleans, or what people were doing in, say, New York and Boston. But nobody was doing that for where I lived. And I
Right.
was torn between joining up and moving to, say, wine country and going out there and hitching to that star. But a piece of me was like, no, you should stay in Florida and carve, kind of plant your flag in the ground for what it means to cook in South Florida. And I was very fortunate that that's the decision that I made, because it made my career have a particular identity. New World Cuisine was the term I came up with, kind of corresponded to the Southwestern cuisine. I realized through I always love to read, as we touched on before, but I was reading some books about the history of gastronomy, and I really fell in love with this book. I'm looking up at it right now, called Why We Eat What We Eat by Raymond Sokolov. And if you saw that book open right here, you would see so many underlined passages and exclamation points and just doodles that were like drawing to me, making sure I really paid attention to this passage or that passage. And I began to understand that the global changes that took place with Columbus and with the transformation of ingredients back and forth between the East and Western hemispheres, and how rapidly the changes took place within even 100 years of Columbus's initial landfall here. The traders going back and forth, dragging their canoes and whatnot through the narrowest places they could to cross from the Atlantic Ocean to the Pacific Ocean, and then continue on the westward track to the Philippines, and how goods and recipes and knowledge began to reverberate back and forth. Florida was kind of like the landing place for so much of that. And so it was an incredible canvas for me to draw from. I had this particular moment when I was working at Louis' Backyard in Key West, where I was the chef, and I was sitting out on the after deck, as the bar was called, that was right on the water there, at 10:30 in the morning before we were open. And I was having my morning coffee, and I was going through 5 or 6 cookbooks and trying to think about what I would run for my specials that night, when I saw a boat heading toward the horizon catch my view, and I went, wonder where it's going. And then I realized it's probably going to Cuba. And I thought, wonder what they're going to eat when they get there. And in my mind, I started to go, why do I have all these books from France and Portugal and Japan and China when I should be focusing on where I'm at? And so for a period of time, I put all those books away and began then to go back to the little tiny joints in Key West, the little lunch counters, and the places where the regular families would go.
Yeah.
And I began quizzing the waitresses and the customers. And, if there was a person next to me that was willing to tell me a little bit more about what their grandmother made and what those ingredients were, I'd cruise through the little bodegas in town and buy all the Spanish ingredients that I could find, because again, this is before internet. And I was just driven to find my voice, my particular voice. And so that began to be the roots of the New World Cuisine.
You are basically the food historian for Florida, basically.
The food historian?
The food historian, right. I mean, you've done a lot of study. Lydia Bastianich's digs in. There's a number of chefs who are very committed to the history of the food. And it lends a greater depth to what you put on the plate. It's a greater understanding. And saying plate, I remember something where your happiest moments are when you're at the point that you're getting ready to plate a dish. the ingredients are there, the mise en place, you've cooked it, now it's time. And that's that artist coming out in you and how that plate looks. And we've always been told that we eat with our eyes. Truth of that is, let's look at all the Instagram and the pictures of food. But there are components that should go into a dish. When I say that, it isn't just a plate of pasta. There's certain textures, flavors. Can you lend some more insight into that?
Yes. You know, I become concerned that people work too much with what the plate looks like rather than what the plate tastes like. And I think it's become heightened in this era of Instagram. I'm on Instagram and I admire Instagram for what it is. But I mean, I think that food should be delicious first and foremost. Finding a way to make it look beautiful is something that is secondary to the my desires. Although I think I've done pretty well with that. I mean, I agree that we do eat with our eyes, and you know, it's really important what things look like, and that it should be. It's all about telling a story. You know, for me, I'm a cook, I'm a chef, but foremost, I try to be a intriguing storyteller with my food, and that story needs to have some sort of historical rootedness and basis. Even though I did coin the term fusion cooking, a lot of people totally misunderstand the term still. Some don't. I'd say it's becoming more understood with time rather than less understood with time, because the people who talk about it and utilize it are doing great things with it. So it's like any powerful term. Rock and roll is a powerful term. Many people just hated that term, but here it is so many years later, and the Stones are playing in Nashville right now, so it's still alive, like
Yeah.
fusion.
I have a couple questions for you.
Uh-huh.
Let me see. Chef Brian Murphy thanks you for your innovation. His question is, where do you see the future direction of New World Cuisine heading?
Great question. Thank you, Brian. Um, Increasingly, what I'm seeing is a sincerity and a willingness to work hard in restaurants that are not so grandiose. They're more neighborhood restaurants, and I applaud that. And this is in spite of and despite of COVID, which is extremely challenging. I have so many friends that are chefs and restaurant operators or involved in the restaurant business here in Miami, where I live, and I see firsthand how challenging it is for them, and my heart goes out. Many of them, though, continue to grapple with it and succeed. But my point really is in answering that question is I see greater confidence than I saw before. Many people come to Florida as a second life to get away from where they were from before, but they come to Florida almost so late that they don't understand this region's ingredients. And they don't make a point to, because I guess they feel like if they're 40 years old already, that they're going to cook the way they did when they were up north somewhere. And so we have a lot of restaurants that have no frame of reference when it comes to the ingredients, the topography, the fish that are available here. And so they may as well still be practicing as if they were in a former place.
Okay, we have another question. Let's see. Are there any dishes that you discovered during your early days of research for New World Cuisine that you still enjoy and share regularly?
I'm sorry?
Okay, let me read this again.
Okay.
Are there any dishes that you discovered during your early days of research for the New World Cuisine that you still enjoy and share regularly today?
So many. Yeah, I mean, I just did a cooking class the other day that employed the very first ingredient that I fell in love with that was kind of outside of my Midwestern background in a restaurant, was in a little tiny restaurant in Key West, and it was the caramelized plantains. plantains, plátanos. When I had those that first time, I was thunderstruck by their richness, their sweetness. I was like, first off, why are there bananas on my dinner plate? I didn't ever have bananas on a dinner plate before. And then someone was kind enough to instruct me to squeeze the lime over the banana and then to make sure I enjoyed it with the black beans that were also present on the plate. Those powerful first flavors of this new home that I took on remain stalwarts in my repertoire. I taught a cooking class the other night, and I employed the same kind of methodology of the plantains that I'd had 40 years ago in that little restaurant in Key West, and it still stands up. So yeah.
I want to tell people that you've seen the posters with the pastas, the different pastas, and then Mark Miller did chilies.
Yes.
Well, if you've seen the poster of exotic fruits, this is something that Norman has done, and you had a handbook that went with it, and it's stunning. And it was done how many years ago? Can you remember?
I'm thinking around 93, and this was a little postcard that they made out of them.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's beautiful. And I remember it might have been an IACP conference somewhere,
Right. Mm-hmm.
and you were representing mangoes. And
Mm-hmm.
I had never tasted what I would call the champagne mango. It
Mm-hmm.
has two names, doesn't it? The champagne one?
I don't know, but I mean, I've been down to Fairchild where I've seen 300 varieties of mangoes,
Really?
all on stretched out on picnic tables all over the place. So I was like freshly educated in a new way.
Well, the champagne ones were creamy, and I just got I was like gobsmacked. I went, oh, this is a new flavor, and a foodie to come across something that's new to the palate.
Mm-hmm.
And if they go online, you basically did an ode to many of these products, like a little 4-minute radio thing that is on your website, so they can listen and learn about each one of these products.
Yeah, on my website, if they go to A Word on Food, that was the name of my long-running radio show. And every episode, I've chosen a word to spin that show around, and it is my way of celebrating these ingredients. Oftentimes, the ingredients of the region, but sometimes I might be traveling and go to Kalustian's Indian market in New York City and talk about that. So I have enjoyed writing a lot in that particular way.
Right. You have been labeled the Walt Whitman of chefs by the late, great Charlie Trotter. You were very close friends with him. In fact, he came in for a job when you were working in Key West. And
looks like we're freezing up a little bit.
Okay, well, I'm moving. So we'll see if Norman will try to come back. I guess he'll check in. But he was very good friends with Charlie Trotter. And there is a new documentary coming out at the Chicago Film Festival. I don't know if you still had the audio with this, Norman, but I was just talking about Love Charlie, the documentary. Okay, I guess he's not hearing me either. I see him. So the documentary is coming out called Love Charlie, and that'll be in Chicago. But Norman was very good friends with Charlie Trotter, Emeril Lagasse. I called them the Three Musketeers of the culinary world. And let's see if we can get you back. Are you getting any of the audio, Charlie? I mean, Charlie, Norman.
I am getting all the audio.
Okay. So do you want to fill me in on this relationship with Charlie and Emeril?
Absolutely. Pleased to. Charlie was the great connector in so many ways. He connected a lot of folks. And at one point in time, it was probably 80, 88, 89. No, it was 88. Charlie had just come from a visit to New Orleans, and I guess he did an event with Emeril when Emeril was still at Commander's Palace. Anyway, Charlie came back and said, "You've got to meet this guy named Emeril. You guys are going to love each other. He's so much fun. He had this red Porsche. He zipped us all around New Orleans in it, and we were just having the greatest time." And I just kept thinking, "Oh, you've got to meet." Well, coincidentally, this event, this ultimate sort of food event, was taking place, or was about to take place, in Santa Fe, and the Society for Cuisine in America was the name of the group, and the folks organizing that, sort of a preceding group to Star Chefs in some ways. The group that was organizing that brought together, I mean, just a who's who of the food world in America at that time, and all in Santa Fe. And there was a large hotel that most of the events were held in the daytime part of it, where the speaking and the demonstrations were going on. And they'd asked various people to speak about various topics. And one of the time slots was where they'd asked a few chefs across the United States from 4 or 5 distinct regions if we would speak about why we cook the way we cook, essentially. And on the stage that day were Emeril, Lydia Shire, Tom Douglas, Charlie Trotter, and myself. The night before was a gathering and get together where, it was just a chance for people to meet and mingle. And that's the first time I met Emeril. And Charlie was there, of course. And we were, in this bar area. And I remember him almost inaudibly speaking, so quiet. And he said, no, he called me Noam, like Noam, Noam. Not Norm, not Norman, but Noam, just his own particular way. Noam, this speech thing tomorrow, you okay with it? And I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, are you nervous? I go, yeah, I guess. Why? He goes, because I'm shitting. I'm scared. I'm like, what? And I could see, what do you mean? He goes, I've never spoke before people like that before. And the ice cubes were rattling in his glass, of scotch. And I just think back on that and go, wow, he sure got over it.
Bam,
so that was the first time.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see. If you could go back in time and give your 20-year-old self a piece of advice, what would it be?
Wear better shoes.
Wear better shoes?
Oh my God.
Is there a backstory to that?
Oh, well, I mean, that's the only part of me that hurts is my feet. But with good shoes, I don't have to worry about it anymore. But clogs, they just about ruin my feet. But I'm all better now. I'm never going to be a distance runner, that's for sure. If I could give a real talking to my 20-year-old self, would probably be to try and take more time to not be at work, be with the family, know how to take a vacation, things that I didn't do very well.
And I told you earlier, I had sent you questions back in 2006 for the cookbook, and I'm just going to see if the answers are similar to it. What is your favorite comfort food?
For years, I would have said pizza. So I'm probably that might have been the answer back then. Seems like now my wife and I will do whatever we're doing cooking wise during the day. And so that would be kind of, that's where our meal of the day would pretty much happen. So at night, we just simply will have like some charcuterie, some cheese and crackers, and maybe a little bit of Serrano ham or something like that. That's a very comforting thing.
Well, your answer was illegal épices and homemade toast with local honey.
I like those.
I hope I'm pronouncing that cheese correctly. Épices?
Oh, époisse.
Époisse.
Époisse, yeah.
Pause.
Yeah, yeah, I love that cheese. It's good. It's good stinky cheese.
Okay, if you were condemned to die, what would be your last meal?
Something that took a real long time to eat.
You said burgundies, white and red. Let's see.
Yeah.
Um, a question, where are the best mangoes from?
Well, South Florida is so extraordinary in its diverse capacity to successfully grow mangoes that I'd say here, but mangoes come from all around the globe, and I'm sure I could have spectacular mangoes in India.
Okay. Going back to the list, we'll do one more and then what is your favorite family recipe?
My wife's father, Irv, was a hardworking television repairman that loved and successfully did barbecue very well. So I would say that, that always is an important thing for us to to do, is continue the tradition that he started for us and with us, and carry on the tradition of St. Louis ribs and my wife's black baked beans, cornbread, and corn on the cob, stuff like that.
Okay. And your answer was Mama's strawberry jam.
Uh,
Still follow suit, carry on the tradition.
yeah.
Yeah. My last question, no, my next to last question. What was your most epic culinary fail?
Gosh, so many come to mind. Oh, I don't know. I don't know. I'm not trying to hide a failure. I just can't think of anything that's really standing out. Um, I can remember being a very young cook, trying to become a chef, and um, I was nervous, and my boss was a stern Italian guy, and I just remember reaching up to get a bottle of olive oil down off the shelf, and it fell onto his station and broke all over his mise en place, and I felt like I was going to have to die, because now all of his setup was ruined, and I was going into service. That was pretty bad.
Yeah, that's a good one. I'll let you get away with that one. And my final question to you is, what didn't I ask you that I should have?
Hmm. Well, we didn't really chat yet about the documentary. We touched about Charlie, but we haven't spoken about the documentary, so we could touch on that.
Okay, well, let's talk about it. You're the expert. I know you're going up to Chicago to see it, but fill us
Yes.
in.
Yeah. Well, there was a very short documentary done about 4 years ago on Charlie's life by a woman named Renee Frigo. Renee is the producer for this documentary, which has been directed by Rebecca Halpern. Rebecca is from a neighboring town and grew up very near where Charlie grew up in the Midwest, in the North Shore. But now she has a production business in Los Angeles. Charlie had many, many really loyal guests. The most frequent diner in the history of Charlie Trotter's restaurant was a financial person named Ray Harris, who was a big guy in the world of Morgan Stanley. Ray was the most frequent guest of Charlie's, despite the fact that Ray lived in New York, not even Chicago. And
Really?
so
Okay.
they became friends, and Ray wanted to make sure that Charlie wasn't forgotten, and he put up the lion's share of the funding to create this documentary. Its title is Love, Charlie, and it debuts in Chicago on this Monday at a theater there, and it soon will be available for distribution throughout the land and across streaming services platforms. I saw an advance of the movie at Renee's home, and it's extraordinarily powerful. It's a warts and all thing. It's a documentary, so it's not a puff piece. And I guess the Chicago Sun-Times has already lauded as one of the top documentaries of the year. So we're looking forward very much to being there for that.
Well, I look forward to seeing it. I've made arrangements. We're going to stream Anthony Bourdain's Roadrunner at my
Hmm.
friend's restaurant. We're doing 10 seats. We've done recipes from La Haze, and it's just going to be an intimate evening of 10 people who want to watch this. There are a lot of documentaries. Julia's coming out in November.
Hmm.
Marcella Hazan is looking to raise funds, the family, for that. Um, Also, Madeline Kaman,
Well,
they're looking, yes, so we have a lot of these coming out.
hmm.
I want to thank you. We could talk forever, and it's just been a pleasure having you on the show and over the period of years of connecting when it was necessary. And I so appreciate that and want to remind people normanvanaken.com. It's not hard. Everything that you want to know, all you have to do is put it in on Google, and there's a million stories. He's on Wikipedia, whatever you know. It's been an honor having you here, Norman, and thank you so much. Stay safe. Enjoy your trip to Chicago. Big mwahs.
Thank you, Dara. Mwah. Take care. Thanks for having me on.
My pleasure. All
Bye-bye.
right, everyone. Let's talk about next week. Let's see if Jen's here. And next week, we're going to be talking to the people from Groundworks Kitchens. It's a new restaurant here in Baltimore that offers a free training program in the West Baltimore area to people to come in and learn a new skill set. And we definitely need it in the restaurant industry to get new people out there. It's a fabulous place, 100 seats, and they just opened for dinner. They have been doing carryout. So if you're in West Baltimore and Washington Boulevard, or you can find it at groundworkskitchen.com. I want to thank you for tuning in. You can always reach me at Food at Jmore Living. My social is at Dara Cooks. jmoreliving.com and Facebook will have the archives of these shows. So dig back, share with your friends. We always appreciate when you share with friends and family. As always, may your plates always, always remain full. Thank you for tuning in, and I will see you next week.